Hello, everybody. My name is Pauline Haycock, and I'm the celebrant for Rayner's Funeral Home, and I'm Ernie's daughter. And I'm really delighted and happy that my family has trusted me enough to look after the service today. So before we have the family come in, I just have a couple of announcements, and the first is, if you have a cell phone, would you please be so kind to turn the ringer off for us? That would be great. Refreshments will be served immediately following the service, and then after that we'll be going out to the Mountain View Cemetery. So please stay if you have the opportunity, stay and have lunch with us. We'd love to visit with you and chat and hear any memories that you have about Ernie. So I'd like to ask you to please rise as my family comes to join us.
It goes like this, the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. You needed proof. You saw her laying on the roof with beauty and light through you. She tied you to the kitchen chair. She broke your throne and she cut your hair. And from your lips she drew the hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Please be seated.
Well, let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for today. I thank you, Lord, that the weather is improved and that so many of our friends could be here today. And I thank you for the safety that you provided for those that traveled so far to be here. And I just ask that you would go with us now during this service, that our family would be comforted and encouraged by the stories and the tales that we tell today. And I thank you for Ernie. I thank you for my dad and the years that he had. And we just ask that you go with us now. In Jesus' name, amen. And I just need to say, Mom and I took some time to pray last night and asked the Lord for the wind to die down. We were really concerned about that. And I'm pretty grateful that it did. So, I know that we have 2 extra rows up here, and I know Richard is going to come and ask people from the lunchroom to come and sit, and you're going to be embarrassed to walk in front of all these people, but I'm asking you, please, if he asks you, would you come in and sit with all of us? Let's get as many of us in here as we can. So don't be shy. So many people have come along beside us this week, and we can't thank you enough for all of the generosity that has been shown to our family. I can't mention everybody, but you know who you are, and your kindness has not gone unnoticed. I'd like to just thank a few people, though, publicly, and that is, first of all, our Auntie Kathy. I don't know where she is. Auntie Kathy. She has been coming to play Joker Rummy and keep Mom company as, you know, Mike and Bonnie and I are working and we couldn't always be at the house. So she was always there checking in, helping Mom, and we just appreciate so much that. And I see her and Uncle Dan always down checking in. To the Farmington Farmerettes. Ladies, you have served our family since our grandpa passed away in 1978. And we are really thankful that you could be here today. So for Grandpa, for Grandma, for Travis, I don't know if you were here for Uncle Lou. I didn't get a chance to ask Auntie Boots that earlier. But thank you, ladies, for braving the weather to come out and help us with the lunch today. Many people from our family have great connections with Peaceview Colony and South Peace Colony. I work there. Mike often is out there. My brother-in-law Dale sees them at Wrights when they're there. They're just such good friends to us, and I want to publicly thank those ladies from those colonies who provided us with buns for the lunch today. You are in for a treat. Those ladies make the best buns, and I think I drove to town yesterday with over 400 buns in the back of my van. And they said, that's just a little batch from the 2 of them. So God bless my friends at the colony. Dr. Rue was outstanding these last few weeks, and we're really grateful for all the help that he gave us. And Richard, Sandy, and Stella, you guys have had some tough days. We had some technical issues. We had some weather issues. Apparently we had some seating issues because nobody's coming in here. And they've just been over the top, wonderful, helpful. And you know, Dad looked great this morning when we saw him. He looked better than he has in a very long time. So, having said all of that, let's get on with it. We have gathered together today to celebrate the life of Ernest William Paradowski. And I am relieved to be able to stand before you and say that Ernie passed away Thursday morning, February 8th, at home, in his own bed on the farm. Just the way he would have wanted it. And it was right before breakfast. I think mornings were my dad's favorite part of the day. Up, start the wood stove in the kitchen, turn on the local radio station, complain about the music, and put on the coffee. Mom would join him, and soon the fragrance of fried kubasa, and for those that aren't Ukrainian and don't know, that's garlic sausage, and eggs on toast would be filling up the house. And that would have been his breakfast preference in the past. But these days, the plop, plop, plop of cream of wheat in the pot on the stove is what you probably would have heard. He had his breakfast cooked on that very same old wood stove his entire life long. Ernie was not subject to change, and he did not adapt well to it. If you knew him, you knew he was consistent. He donned the same green PWG work pants and shirt, picked up the same old black metal lunch kit, and went out the door with his green vest on as he headed for work. When he got home, it was a cup of tea and some cookies, and then out to work on the farm. And for me as a kid, There was security in that. I always knew where I could find my dad. If he wasn't working, he was somewhere on the farm. And today we're going to hear about a man who worked hard, looked after his family, and loved the land that he lived on. He was proud of his hardworking parents and the life they carved out here in the Peace Country as homesteaders. And he was happy to know that there are still Paradoski farmers in the world today, even if they go by the name of Moat. Ernie wasn't particularly concerned about what you thought of him, but he was concerned about how certain things were done. Things like plowing the headlands correctly, seeding straight rows, or making nice, tidy, round bales, and taking proper care of your livestock. Over the years, we heard plenty of stories of the poor animal husbandry he witnessed as he graded the back roads of our community. And by the way, it was 5 passes for a properly graded road, 2 cutting, and 3 spread passes. That also was important to him, and I hope I got that right. Ernie always had a joke ready for a visitor or the grandkids and enjoyed making others smile. He especially loved little kids. The last months of Ernie's life were not spent the way he would have liked, and he was forced to accept the changes that came his way, and most of the time, not very graciously. But I wouldn't change these past 3 difficult weeks, and I will tell you why. In the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, it says, and hang in with me for this because you might be a little shocked about what I'm going to read. A good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume, and the day you die is better than the day you were born. Better to spend your time at funerals than at parties. After all, everyone dies. So the living should take this to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for sadness has a refining influence on us. A wise person thinks a lot about death, while a fool thinks only about having a good time. This passage is not encouraging us to think morbidly about death, but to think clearly about the reality of it. It reminds us to examine the direction our lives are taking, and that in life, we still have time to change. My dad was definitely refined these last few weeks as he grudgingly allowed us to take care of him. I think we all had moments that we never expected to have with our dad, and we had a chance to show our appreciation to him by caring for him, and he appreciated our help most of the time. Recently, I came across a similar saying as that passage, and it's a little quote that is often found on headstones around the world, and it says, "Remember, man, as you walk by, as you are now, so was I. As I am now, so you shall be. Remember this and follow me." It was difficult for Ernie to be sick. He was used to being in charge of his corner of the world. And gradually over the last few years, he had to give up control of the things that meant the most to him. Ernie forgot how it was when his own father was elderly and the struggles that Bill had. Ernie only remembered when he himself was young and strong and able to do. That is what frustrated Ernie to the very end. Ernie didn't expect to get old, and neither do we. We're all like Ernie. We get up each morning and we put our pants on one leg at a time, and some of us hate cats in the house, just like Ernie did. We work very hard to provide for our family, just like Ernie did. We have some shining moments and some shortcomings, just like Ernie did. His life has taught me about some things that I don't want to be, but more importantly, about the things that I do want to be. And so we're going to hear about his life. I'm going to ask my husband Doug and my daughter Summer to come and share the eulogy with us now.
First of all, I would like to thank the family for the privilege of honoring Ernie in his eulogy. Thank you very much. Ernest William Paradowski was born November 6, 1936, here in Dawson Creek at the old St. Joseph's Hospital. He was the second of 4 children born to Bill and Ella Paradowski. Ernie always said that his earliest memory was the doctor spanking him the day he was born and telling him to stop running around the hospital naked. Ernie and his siblings, Dean, Lewis, and Violet, were raised with a strong work ethic, and though they learned to work hard at a very young age, they also had a lot of fun growing up. Ernie was a great storyteller and would gladly reminisce about the old days, telling his children and then his grandchildren about how life was lived in the early days of the Peace Country. Life was not always easy on the homestead. The work was all manual, but eventually Bill acquired the much-needed horses for field work and transportation. From the time he was a small boy, Ernie worked with the horses and always admired a well-trained team his entire life. When you had a long walk to school and back every day, there was always plenty of time to think about ways to get into mischief. One of his favorite stories to tell in recent years was about his uncle, John Trenchard. Uncle John lived in a neighboring quarter and was known to be of a cranky nature. One of the 3 siblings decided to lock the outhouse door after Uncle John went inside, and then using a hand-pumped fire extinguisher, they took it upon themselves to spray water in every available knothole in the wee shack. When Uncle John's hollering reached the farmhouse, Jean, Ernie, and Lewis lit out for safer territory as Ella came to open the locked door. Though they did get a talking to, Ella was secretly giggling along. They kept their distance from Uncle John for many days after that. Ernie's sister Violet was a Down syndrome child. In those years, children with disabilities were sent away to be institutionalized. Bill and Ella told the doctor in no uncertain terms that Violet would be coming home and would be raised and cared for by them. It really was a family effort, and Violet, also known as Little Joe, was the joy of their home. Though she suffered many health issues that go along with Down syndrome, she was active and had a special place in the hearts of many. Ernie loved to recount the endless funny things that she would say and do. Sadly, she passed away in 1959. As a young man, Ernie had decided that he had had enough formal education, and he stayed home to help on the farm. He worked at several sawmills in the area, and eventually he hired on with Bruce Harden and worked in the oil patch. Yes, young people, there was an oil patch here in the 1950s. Ernie was a truck driver and hauled pipe and equipment between Dawson Creek and Fort Nelson. Over the years, he regularly spoke of his experiences working up north. And personally, that was one of the things that I enjoyed the most. I quizzed him endlessly about that, and it was always the stories he could tell. It was amazing. Dalton and Norma Doonan moved their family into the neighborhood just a couple of miles north of the south of the Paradowski farm. Dolores and her siblings would often make their way to the farm to get milk and visit. Ernie started walking Dolores home, and that was the beginning of 58 plus years together. Dolores recalls many fun evenings driving around in Ernie's black Ford truck with her friend Babs Smiley in tow. On November 6, 1959, they sealed the deal and were married at the United Church in Dawson Creek. After the wedding, Ernie helped Uncle Mike Sawinski out at his farm in Clayhurst. But in the spring of 1960, Ernie started building a house on the quarter just west of Bill and Ella's farm. Ernie was left-handed, and his house was custom made to meet all of his left-handed needs. Some doors opened to the left, water taps had hot on the right, and turned opposite of what you might expect. Home sweet home. As was mentioned earlier, Ernie held many jobs, but finally settled in at the Department of Highways in Bruce Coopy in 1960, where he worked for 39 years before he retired. Almost exactly 1 year after the wedding, Michael William was born on November 8, 1960, while Ernie was away working. It was up to Ernie's cousin Bill Trenchik to get Dolores to the hospital. When Bonnie Lorraine on November 15, 1962, Ernie was home and did the driving. He always said they almost delivered Bonnie on the train tracks just west of town, so he declared that when it was close to the time for Pauline to be born, in December of '68, Dolores would be staying in town with her sister Florence, close to the hospital. The family heard about Ernie's workday every night at supper, Everything from the number of miles he had graded or wildlife seen along the way was reported on. Sometimes it was a funny story, sometimes reports of close calls and accidents. Ernie graded thousands of miles of road in the outlying areas of Dawson Creek. When Kelly Ingverson heard of Ernie's passing, he texted Mike and said, "He was a great man. I won't forget my time with him. Taught me lots, turned me from a grader driver into an operator." Though he was a grader man, Ernie was a farmer at heart. There are countless stories about life on the farm. Farming with a team of horses and being on the threshing crew, getting the first gas-powered equipment, pulling calves and chasing cows, milking cows in the old barn by lantern lights, pigs, chickens, horses, and cows. As the Archie Bunker theme song says, those were the days. Speaking of Archie Bunker, Ernie had his favorite TV shows. High Chaparral, Bonanza, Gunsmoke were all favorites. And if Ernie's show was on, you were watching what he was watching. When Heather and Travis were little, they often had sleepovers at Grandma and Grandpa's house. One Friday night, Travis was sitting with Grandpa in the big green chair, watching Tommy Hunter. When Pauline got home, she was obviously too noisy, because Travis put his finger to his lips and said, "Shh, Auntie, Tommy Hunter is on." Poor little guy, brainwashed so early in life, like old time. Ernie was painfully practical in so many areas of life. Vicks Vapor Rub, Buckley's Mixture, and an onion sandwich would cure just about anything that ailed you. Any Watkins product or wild strawberry elixir were next on the list of remedies. And of course, Ernie took great pride in telling people that he still used the old outhouse. No indoor plumbing for him. Ernie's wardrobe choices were where he truly shined, such as at Mike and Shelley's wedding. It was quite a snowy event for a spring wedding, and in true Ernie fashion, he arrived in the church in his rolled-down rubber boots. It was a farmer fashion statement, to be sure. I believe the bride's father, decked out in his wedding attire, expressed his envy at Ernie being allowed to sport such footwear. Ernie liked all of God's creatures. He was always seeing wildlife, big or small, as he traveled down the road. He could spot the largest of moose, right down to the lowly weasel or rabbit. Ernie's daughter, Bonnie, discovered that a furry little creature had made its way into her shed. So she knew if anyone could tell her what it would be Ernie. She called her dad and described to Ernie a little bundle of fur with puffs of hair on its ears. "It's so cute," she told him. Ernie made his way down to the shed and went inside. He backed up faster than he went in. In a few very short, flowery words that we cannot use here today, he explained that it was a pack rat. Ernie worked hard, and when he could find a way to make a job easier or more efficient, he would. So when Pauline was in grade 9, she started taking guitar lessons at school. When Ernie saw that she was going to take it seriously and actually use what she was learning, he decided she needed a music stand. A couple of 2x6 pieces nailed one on top of each other in an X were draped with green fabric that had been stylishly trimmed with pinking shears. Next, a 3-foot piece of 1-inch pipe wrapped in black electrical tape was inserted into the hole drilled into the wood. One 12-inch square cooling rack from Dolores' kitchen, with 3 little bent pieces of baling wire to keep the music sheets from sliding off, was skillfully attached to the rack pipe, and voila, a music stand. Ernie was way ahead of the do-it-yourself movement today. Ernie's shining
moment of practicality occurred just a few short weeks ago. Because of Ernie's declining health, Dolores had not been out shopping, and unfortunately, they ran out of toilet paper. Ernie flatly refused to use the Kleenex box that Dolores had put in the bathroom. In the middle of the night, she woke up to a sawing sound outside the bedroom door. In the morning, when she asked Ernie what he had been doing, he told her that he got a meat saw out of the utility room and cut a few rolls of paper towel in half to make his own toilet paper. Ernie took up a hobby, carpentry. Grandkids received toy boxes, brides received cake boxes, to display their wedding cakes, and Dolores had some closets made for her bedroom. Fir or knotty pine was his wood of choice, and for the few years he enjoyed the craft. When Ernie retired, he found ways to keep himself busy around the farm, but more often than not, he enjoyed doing jobs for his children and their families. He loved his grandkids, and it wasn't unusual to see a little tyke in the tractor with Grandpa going to feed the cows. Sometimes, if they were lucky, they even got a ride in the bucket in the front of the tractor. Grandpa always had a joke or a funny story to tell the kids, and of course, they all heard about the times when, quote, I was a kid. It wasn't unusual to have Grandpa reach into his pocket and pull out a handful of change and flash it quickly past the kids and then say, if you can guess how much money is in my pocket, you can have it. In fact, he would always have a loonie or two neat for just about any kid that came across his path, whether it was at the store or the doctor's office. A few of the grandkids may have felt the sting of Grandpa's hand on their backsides, but they all knew that Grandpa cared about them. Once we learned about Ernie's time being short, the family started dropping by for quick visits. Ernie always put on his best smile and told a joke to keep the conversation lighthearted in order to keep the grandkids from being sad.
Retirement allowed Ernie and Dolores to spend a lot more time together. And in fact, it wasn't unusual to see them out for a Sunday drive, whether it was Tuesday or Friday. They often made circle trips, and one of the most common was Dawson Creek to Rycroft, turn north, and head to Hines Creek, and then back to Fort St. John, and down the Alaska Highway to home. Sometimes they switched it up and cut through Clayhurst and Roland. And if they were driving by family, they would stop in and visit, always bringing a treat. If we weren't home, we always knew they'd stop by because there would be candy hiding in the barbecue. Ernie and Dolores often went out for a meal. They knew who ate at Lee's, Ming Fan, and the Lodge. If Dolores needed to do grocery shopping at the co-op, Ernie would visit with friends and neighbors while he waited. These are only a few of the many stories that we could tell about Ernie, but we would like to close with a condolence that was sent to Rayner's website. It simply sums up Ernie. We are terribly sorry to hear of Ernie's passing. He was such a hard-working, salt-of-the-earth kind of guy who will be missed terribly. He was always ready to help anyone who needed anything. We were so lucky that we had the good fortune to be his neighbor 40 years ago. Krista and Freddie Leash.
Thank you. It really was hard to compress all of the years into just a few short stories. Dad was a pretty funny guy, actually. But Auntie Jean handed me a little note when she arrived, my dad's sister Jean. And she says, during our elementary school years in the mid-40s, my two brothers and I walked to Sweetwater School, 2.5 miles, AM and PM. One morning we decided to run to school to see who could get there first. Who came first? Well, it took us about 20 minutes, only seconds apart. But it was fun, she said. And there was lots of stories about that, that's for sure. So now I'm going to ask my dear friend Gina Auden to come and we're going to sing. And you're going to sing with us. I believe it's page 28 in that little red book that's around you there. It's the Old Rugged Cross. And if I'm wrong, just shout out the number. I'd ask you to stand, but I think that you're kind of packed in so good you might not get back down again. Is it 28? Was that right? Yeah.
Suffering and shame.
My dad had a way of saying and doing things that were completely unique to him. The day he passed away, we started writing them down, and boy, were there a lot of them. Things like wearing his rubber boots rolled down, his pride of still using the outhouse instead of indoor plumbing, and as most of his nieces and nephews and some grandchildren knew, never, ever, ever answer in the affirmative or with uncertainty if Uncle Ernie asked you if you liked horseradish, because soon enough you would be trying it on a teaspoon. Had a lot of people say, what? He used to make up songs to the radio. What was ever playing on the radio, he had his own tune or his own words for it. Won't share any of them. But I wrote a little ditty that I thought would try and include as many of the Ernie-isms, that's what we called them, in it as possible. It doesn't always rhyme, bear with me, and listen close, but you should catch it. If you knew Ernie, then you would know that most things were okay, but some things were a no-no. So this little rhyme is chock full of wisdom with what we like to call Ernie-isms. Shut the door, were you born in a barn? A sock can't last forever if you would just learn how to darn. Take off your shoes, turn out the lights, and it is never healthy to wear your jeans too tight. Shake the hand that shook the wood pile. Don't take any wooden nickels. Be careful not to eat too many prunes or you will get the flying axe handles. Heard that a lot? This is for Chris. When asked how you are or how do you fare, your answer should be, Chris, as fine as frog's hair. Yeah, as fine as frog's hair. But when you asked him how he was doing, his answer would be, just like an old woman. Even me. This is my favorite. I won't get through it without laughing, I'm sure. If you ever belly up for a meal at Ernie's table, you will need to know that Endgate comes in Velveeta, cheddar, or marble. That's cheese, in case you don't know. The can of brown beans bubbling in the pot. To Ernie, it was better known as buckshot. Gravel in the sugar bowl is for his coffee or tea, and if you served him sow belly with fried eggs, he was sure to be pleased. No meal is complete without bread and axle grease, but visitor beware or you'll wear it in the face. A lot of people could tell you that if you sat down to Ernie's table, eventually you'd get slapped in the face with a piece of bread and butter. Though not a religious man, Ernie still thought to ask a blessing, straight and to the point as you would be guessing. Holy Moses Billy Goat, the one with the biggest belly eats the most. Or, here's the potatoes, here's the meat, come on everybody, let's sit down and eat. Through the teeth and over the gums, watch out stomach, here it comes. I know that some of these made sense and some were just silly, but that's just the way it was when you were talking with Ernie. Of all of his isms, this one is my favorite. I'd hear adios each night as I climb under my blankets. That was just some fun stuff that we talked about the day my dad passed away. One of the things that I wanted to share that I think is really important to mention is that my mom and dad were married for 58 years in November. Pretty proud of that. And I thought that it was appropriate that I take the time to tell a joke today, because my dad always had a joke in his back pocket. You may have heard this little story before, but I love to share it. It has been said that a wedding is an event, but a marriage is an achievement. And that was a remarkable achievement for Ernie and Dolores, 58 years. And I recently found an example of how to have a happy marriage. A man and a woman had been married for 60 years. They kept no secrets from each other except a shoebox the woman had in the top of her closet that she cautioned her husband never to open or even ask about. However, one day the woman got sick and the doctor said she would not recover. The man got the shoebox and took it to his wife's bedside. She agreed it was time he should know what was in the box. When he opened it, he found 2 crocheted doilies and a stack of money totaling $25,000. She said, "When we were to be married, my grandmother told me the secret of a happy marriage was to never argue. She told me that if I ever got angry with you, I should just keep quiet and crochet a doily." How many doilies you got, Mom? The old man was so moved he had to fight back tears. Only 2 doilies in the box. She'd only been angry with him 2 times in 60 years. He almost burst with happiness. "Honey," he said, "that explains the doilies, but what about all of this money? Where did it come from?" "Oh," she said, "that's the money I made from selling the doilies." I knew I was going to have a chance to share that. So we're going to hear Ernie's favorite song now, from Carrie Regan. For those of you that don't know what he was saying, he's a poor, poor farmer. I have a wood heater that sits downstairs in my family room, and it's positioned right at the bottom of the stairs so that the heat can travel up to the rest of the house. And let me tell you, that big old RSF heater has been working overtime this winter, and the heat that it spreads through the house is cozy. And I'm sure you've heard it said before, there's nothing like wood heat. My parents have always had a wood cook stove in their home. It was in my grandparents' home as my dad grew up, and then came to his place after he and Mom got married. It has cooked plenty of meals, baked pans of cookies, bread, and pies. It is constant, familiar, and it enveloped my dad with relief when he stepped inside the door after having been outside doing chores, or more recently it kept him warm as he had become so very thin. Folks, I love my wood stove. Even though it means a little extra work, like sweeping up the wood chips and the ashes, I wouldn't trade it. In fact, my favorite job every year is hauling in the winter wood supply, and my children will nod their head and say yes to that. I've been known to stop along the road and pick up stray pieces of firewood that have fallen off of some unfortunate guy's loads. You know how folks laugh about women in shoes? Well, anyone who knows me knows how much I love firewood. I think my sister feels much the same way about her wood stove. Mike, not so much. I hear there's a pellet stove at his now. If my wood stove had to be taken from my house, it would be like losing an old friend. And the thing I would miss the most about it would be its warmth, its security, and its dependability. And family, I know that losing a wood stove is nothing compared to losing Ernie. But I think it's a good analogy. Like our wood stoves, Ernie was a constant in our family. He was familiar, secure, and dependable. Sometimes he may have been trouble and a little messy. You know, he required a little work, but you could count on him. He was there, and he has a very important place in our family, and now all that has changed. Everything will be different from now on, and I'm sure the road ahead looks a little bit overwhelming. When life unfolds according to our wishes, or when we experience unexpected good fortune, we find it easy to embrace change. We welcome it with open arms. But sometimes the changes we must endure are painful, and they leave our heads spinning and our hearts broken with grief. And grief visits all of us who live long and dare to love and care about another person. Ernie is gone, and our family dynamic has changed. Every family event will now be different, and there will be someone as well as something missing. Things will never be the same again, and what we have is a new kind of normal. And I'd like to remind each one of you here that loneliness is one of the most painful emotions in grieving. Yet our Heavenly Father has made a haven for us. In Psalm 68:6, King David said, "God places the lonely in families." And so I challenge each one of you here today to come and visit my mom. Have a cup of tea. She's going to feel the loneliness most of all. So come and encourage her with a visit as she adjusts to life without Ernie. It's time for the PowerPoint.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, when the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may? Is promise really something people kept, not just something they would say? Families really bow their heads to pray, daddies really never go away. Oh, oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. we call it progress, but I just don't know. And Grandpa, let's wander back into the past, then paint me the picture of long ago. Lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may. Is promise really something people kept, not just something they would say and then forget? Families really bow their heads to pray, daddies really never go away. Tell me about the good old days. Whoa, whoa, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Families really bow their heads to pray, daddies really never go away.
Dusty old farmer out working your field, hanging down over your tractor wheel. The sun beating down turned the red paint to orange and rusty old patches of steel. There's no farmer songs on that car radio, just cowboys, truck drivers and pain. Well, this is my way to say thanks for the meal, and I hope there's no shortage of rain. Straw hat and old dirty hankies, mopping a face like a shoe. Thanks for the meal, here's a song that is real, from a kid from the city to you. Straw hat and old dirty hankies, mopping a face like a shoe. Thanks for the meal, here's a song that is real, from a kid from the city to you. Though the combines gang up and take most of the bread, things just ain't like they used to be. Though your kids are out after the American dream, and they're working in big factories, if I come by when you're out in the sun, can I wave at you just like a friend? These days when everyone's taking so much, there's somebody giving back in. Straw hat and old dirty hankies, mopping a face like a shoe. Thanks for the meal, here's a song that is real, from a kid from the city to you. Straw hat and old dirty hankies, mopping a face like a shoe. Thanks for the meal, here's a song that is real, from a kid from the city to you.
and I had a nightmare. You could read quite a story in the calluses and lines. Years of work and worry had left their mark behind. I remember Daddy's hands, how they held my mama tight and patted my back for something done right. There are things that I've forgotten that I loved about the man, but I'll always remember the love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands. I remember Daddy's hands working till they bled, sacrificed unselfishly just to keep us all fed. If I could do things over, I'd live my life again and never take for granted the love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for Ernie's life. Lord, there's a hole, and it's going to be hard to fill. And we pray that you would help us with our friends to be able to do that, that you would help us to remember, and that we might take Ernie's life and remember always the good things that he did, and that we might tell others. Pray especially for Dolores, that you would be with her and help her in these next years to adapt. We thank you again for this time and for everyone you brought out here and the encouragement that is to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
So I'd like to just close with a little poem. And again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming and being here. The poem's called Afterglow, and I think it's what each one of us would want to, for our families, and for them to think of us after our passing. I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when life is done. I'd like to leave an echo whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times and brightened summer days. I'd like the tears of those who grieve to dry before the sun of happy memories that I leave when life is done. Thank you, Dad, for leaving us those memories. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for Ernie?
I get where I'm going, on the far side of the sky. The first thing that I'm gonna do is spread my wings and fly on the land beside mine. Run my fingers through the snow, where I might find out what it's like to ride a drop of rain. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be only happy tears. I will shed the sins and struggles I have carried all these years, and I'll leave my heart wide open. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, don't cry for me down here. I'm gonna walk with my granddad, and he'll match me step for step. And I'll tell him how I missed him every minute since he left. And then I'll hug his